Alright, so I just got back from seeing Hidden Figures. It was fantastic. Like, this movie, it's like they genetically, in a lab, created this movie so that I would love it. Because it's like, about real people, and the space program, and overcoming adversity. Oh, it was so good. So, it's based on true events about 3 women who worked for NASA at Langley in the 60s. And, probably beyond, but it was set when they were working on the project to send the first American astronauts into space. And, I mean, that's what it's about. It's about doing that work, but it's also about the fact that these 3 women are black. And so it's like, you know, it's intersectionality. It's they're women and they're black, so like everybody's shitting on them, right? And making it really difficult for them to get as far ahead as they ought to. You've got the one lady, Dorothy. What she wants is to be a supervisor because she's doing the job of a supervisor for the black ladies who are working as computers. And they're like, oh, you don't need a supervisor. And she's like, I'm doing the job of a supervisor. She just, like, wants the title and the pay, like, duh. And finally, by the end of the movie, she does get to become a supervisor. And that's really great, because, like, during the movie, they install an IBM computer, and I guess they weren't really calling them computers yet. The language switch hadn't happened, because the women are computers, right? But, like, so she decides, okay, we're going to become obsolete once they figure out how to work this thing. So I'm going to learn, what was the language? Fortran, and I am going to teach it to all of my girls, and then we're going to know how to run this thing. So, and then that's what happens. So they're able to work on the computer, and they don't get fired. And then at the end of the movie, she becomes the supervisor for the IBM division, and it's like, ah! And then you've got Mary, who was delightful. She was very funny, and she was smart, and she had like a bachelor's degree in something, but she was working with the engineers, but wasn't an engineer herself, of course. And her boss was telling her that she ought to apply for this program to be educated as an engineer. But then everybody's like, oh, well, she's like, it doesn't specify that I can't do this. It says open to all applicants, and they're like, well, suddenly there's all these requirements that didn't exist, and she's like, oh. So she has to go to a court to appeal to attend night classes that are required. Because the night classes are at a white high school. Because the state of Virginia apparently does not give one single fuck about federal law. But she does get that court order, and she does get to go to the class, and so that's great, and I love it. And then the main character, though, is Catherine Goebel, and real person. They had some of the text at the end of the movie, like you expect in a movie like this, that tells you what happens to the people. And NASA named a building after her last year. Of course, by that point, I'm like crying because this movie is just so wonderful. But Catherine is really, really, really smart at math. She's gone to college and everything, and she's working as a computer. But because she can do analytic geometry, she gets sent to, like, what were they called? The Space Task Force or whatever. Like, the guys who are actually doing the calculations that will ultimately figure out the orbits and stuff. And so she was working with them, and she's kind of having to deal with Jim Parsons' character, who is dismissive and a jerk. And her boss is Kevin Costner, which I spent the whole movie like, this actor is familiar. Not knowing it was Kevin Costner, like an idiot. But, and he was great, and like, oh, it was so good. It was perfect. It was just like, you were following the struggles of these 3 women, and then, yes, they got their happy endings, and yes, John Glenn gets to orbit space, and yes, we're gonna go to the moon, and everything is, And they do such a good job of ratcheting up that tension, too, when John Glenn is actually orbiting, because, you know, his heat shield starts coming off and stuff, and they're like, oh, shit. And it's just amazing to me that movies can make me really care about that and on the edge of my seat, despite the fact that I know everything's going to turn out okay. Like, I know my history. I know this is not how John Glenn dies. So, yeah. It was a really good movie. Like, I fucking love the history of the American space program. So that is why I'm talking about this movie, because, like The Right Stuff, it fits into that category of being based on history, science, fact. And, and there's this lovely bit at the very end, right before the credits, where they showed actual pictures of these three women, both when they were younger and when they're old. And I think they might still be around. I think I saw that at least one of them as maybe actually saw the movie. I'm not really sure, but that's really cool. I mean, they're all old, if they're alive, but it's not inconceivable. I mean, this movie is set in, like, what? Early 60s, I guess? I'm not sure what year. I think they probably said, but I don't remember. I love how I'm like, I'm such a nerd for American space history, and then I immediately reveal I have no idea what year any of this stuff happened in. Yeah, so I really liked this movie. I would strongly encourage people to go see it. Yeah, I hear it's doing really well, which it totally should be. It is so good. But yeah, so that's my ringing endorsement of this film that I actually went to the theaters to go see, which I don't do for most movies. So that is good. I guess as an aside, I did go see Rogue One and enjoyed it a lot. I just didn't feel compelled to immediately make a video about it, I guess. So, probably not. I don't know if I'm gonna do a Rogue One video at any point. Maybe, but we'll see about that. So, yeah, go see Hidden Figures.